As promised in the last lecture, in the next couple of lectures, we're going to look at the CIA Triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Throughout this course, I'm going to call it the CIA Triad. You may, in other courseware, see it as AIC. I'm guessing because some people confuse it with the Central Intelligence Agency. Since we don't do that, and I'm going to be very clear when I talk about the actual agency, for now, CIA is the CIA Triad. And if you look at the image over here on the right, you can see the CIA Triad. Confidentiality is what most people think information security is, but it really is much, much more. Confidentiality is us keeping our secret secret. We need to ensure that only the people who are authorized can access the data. But we also need integrity. We want to make sure that no one can modify our data without knowing, because if I, on my bank account, all of a sudden can add an extra zero, for the bank at least, that's probably not very good. The data integrity is damaged. And as the third leg of the triad, we have availability. We need to make sure that authorized people who need to access the data can access it when they need to. And when I mentioned that this chapter is the foundation of the whole course, this is what everything else builds on. Really, the CIA Triad is the foundation of the foundation. Or we can say it's the foundation anchors. This is what everything else we're going to cover ties back to. And how much of these we need depends on what we're protecting and our business. If this is a public-facing website, well then we need availability and we need integrity. If it's a payment platform, well then confidentiality and integrity are much more important. We still want the availability. We want people to give us their money, but confidentiality and integrity are more important. And this is one of those things that as a cybersecurity professional, you're going to have to work with. You need to find that fine balance between what is secure enough while still being usable. I mean, I know we want to keep our server super secure, but if no one can use it, does it really serve a purpose? So let's start out by looking at the first of the three, confidentiality. And you've probably seen many of the same movies that I have, where some super sophisticated hacker compromises the supercritical data and steals the secrets. And while that does happen in the real world, most of the time though, it's someone making a mistake, an admin, a customer, but it could be attackers. For us though, it doesn't really matter how our confidentiality is breached, because it is. Our data is compromised. It of course matters how we were compromised because we want to fix that flaw, we want to make sure it doesn't happen again, but regardless, if it is just one of our employees sharing the data with a competitor or it is a super complex hack, we are still compromised. Some of the attacks that could compromise our confidentiality could be attacks on our encryption or cryptanalysis. And while it is possible to do, it is very difficult. And the reason it is very difficult today is because encryption is so strong. So unless there is some sort of flaw in the encryption or how we implemented the encryption, it's going to be very difficult to break. And the flaw in the encryption algorithm or the implementation could be called a side channel attack. What is much more likely is social engineering. It is much easier to get someone to give you the password to the server than it is to actually break it. And we will cover all of these threats later in the course. But for a complex password with a reasonably high AES encryption could take, with current computers, 100 or 50 years to break. Whereas calling Bob and saying, hey, this is so-and-so from the server team, I don't have this password, can you give it to me? Much easier. It could also be a keylogger. Some admin does something they're not supposed to. They go to a website, they click on a link in an email, their computer is compromised. The next time they log into the server, the keylogger picks up the password and sends it to the attacker. And here again, think back to people, processes, and technology. If we had given that user the right training, we have raised their awareness, they would know not to go to that website and not to click on that link. We could also mitigate some of this with multi-factor authentication. Whenever a server admin logs into that server using their password, they get prompted to type in a token they have on an app on their phone. Meaning the attacker can't log into the server because they only have the username and password, they don't have the token. And throughout this course, I'm gonna say, give them the training to raise their awareness. The important part here is raising their awareness. We want them to change their behavior. I have sat through many cybersecurity training events where people don't pay attention. They don't care. They just have to do 1 hour of cybersecurity training every quarter, and it's the same presentation every time. At that point, it's wasting everybody's time. We need to make sure that the training we give our users raises their awareness, changes their behavior, so next time they see an email that could potentially be phishing, they send it to IT security. And while it might seem counterintuitive, the more training, the better training we give our team, the more security incidences they're going to report, because they know what to look for. So more reported incidences is actually a good thing. We could also have smart devices on our network that are not properly segmented. It is awesome having all these smart devices, smart TVs, smart fish tanks, garage doors, whatever, but most of them are most often unpatched. Some of them you can't even update the software, and many of them are built for functionality, not security, meaning they have huge gaping security holes, and if we put them on the regular network with all our important stuff, they can be a very easy way for an attacker to get onto our network. So IoT devices needs to be on their own network, they need to be patched as much as possible, and if we can, we need to remove all the default profiles, the default passwords, all that stuff, and install our own. And yes, we will cover this more in depth later. And with that, we are done with this lecture. Thank you for being here. I will see you in the next one.